As you read the Old Testament, you see in stories this object called the Ark of the Covenant. Now, as you think of the Ark of the Covenant, it might bring up memories of Indiana Jones, but the Ark of the Covenant has a powerful place in the theology of the Old Testament. You see, the Ark was one of the most sacred objects in Israel. Its features are described in detail in Exodus 25, verses 10 through 22. There we find that the Ark was about 4 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet. It was made of acacia wood and it was overlaid with gold. The Ark had a golden cover known as the mercy seat. As part of the mercy seat, there were 2 angelic statues which were called the cherubim. They were at opposite ends of the mercy seat, facing each other with their faces bowed down. The Ark was a chest, and it contained 3 items. It contained the 10 Commandments, a leftover pot of manna from the desert, and Aaron's rod, which validated his appointment by God. When Solomon built the temple, the Ark was placed in the Holy of Holies. It was the only object in there. Now you might be wondering, where is the Ark today? Unfortunately, the Ark was lost, probably when Jerusalem was destroyed in 586 BC. Now that's just some of the facts about the Ark. I want to tell you theologically what God intended with the Ark. First, the Ark demonstrated God's presence. We see this in Joshua 3:3-4. The leader said, "When you see the Levitical priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord your God, move out from your positions and follow them. Since you have never traveled this way before, they will guide you." See, the priests were carrying the Ark, they were with the Ark, and the Ark was the presence of the Lord, and God's presence guided the people of Israel, and God's presence also led them into war. So in the Battle of Jericho, the Ark is there present, leading God's people, showing that God fights for Israel. The Ark also demonstrated God's holiness. In Numbers 4:15, we read, "The Kohathites will come and carry these things to the next destination, but they must not touch the sacred objects or they will die." This is a long list talking about how to handle the sacred objects like the Ark of the Covenant, and it was one people's job to carry the Ark, and it says here that if they ever touched it, they would die. And in fact, there's one story about a man who reached out to grab the Ark, and he died. And that shows us God's holiness. And lastly, the Ark demonstrated God's mercy. The most important part of the Ark was the mercy seat. This is where in Leviticus 16 we read that once a year the high priest, he would go to the Ark and he would put blood on the mercy seat. He would be making atonement for his sins and the sins of the Israelite people. To do that, he would sprinkle the blood of a sacrificed animal onto the mercy seat. Now this is important to us because the Ark shows us the true ultimate place of atonement, the place where you and I find atonement, the forgiveness of sins, and that's at the cross of Jesus Christ. Look at what Romans 3:24-25 says about the sacrifice of Jesus. "And all are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of his blood to be received by faith." The New Testament uses the language of the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat to explain what Jesus did for us. Jesus is our eternal sacrifice, and so we don't have to go to the Ark anymore. We don't have to go to a priest to make atonement on our behalf. We come to God the Father through Jesus' sacrifice on the cross. And the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament is a little picture of what God was going to do through the coming of Jesus. Now go ahead and pause this video and discuss some of these questions.